We're going to finish the morning with, I'm just going to say this, one of my favorite people in the world. Please welcome the chairman and chief pollinator of Volan Ventures, John Elkington. John.
Thanks, Joe.
So, John, you just flew in, a couple days ago from New York. You're at Climate Week. We made a big announcement about a new project. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's hard to follow Ramez Nam. I haven't heard him speak before. I'm partway through the third volume of his trilogy, Apex. If you haven't read it, I recommend it very highly. But what he was just talking about is still foreign territory for most people in the boardrooms and C-suites, where certainly we work. And so what we've done with the UN Global Compact, many of you will know that the compact was founded in 2000. It's now 8,800 companies around the world. But a lot of these companies are still framing this agenda as, I often see it as a bit like peanuts and a comfort blanket. They've got these very dilute definitions of sustainable development or sustainability, and they cling on to them. And that's around responsibility, which is great, and accountability, which is great, and stakeholder engagement and stuff like that. But it's not digging into some of the stuff that we've been hearing over the last couple of days here at Verge. And so this is just an attempt to start to sort of blast open the doors of business-to-business platforms like the Compact and start getting those people to come to places like this.
So you launched, it's called Project Breakthrough?
Yeah.
And what is it?
Well, about 4 years ago, in 2012, we did an event which almost killed us. We're not conference organizers like you, but it was called the Breakthrough Capitalism Forum. And we had about 27 people come who were doing it sort of TED-style production standards. And some of them said it was the most frightening event that they'd ever been to, because I mean, it was quite a critical audience. But that was our initial attempt to say, we think sustainability is a concept of the future, but it's gone completely off track for the moment. And therefore, the breakthrough notion is this sense that there are, yes, technologies, and we just heard about some of those. There are business models increasingly, and they're popping up left, right, and center. And incidentally, many people, when you talk to them in business about the fundamental business model that their company or business operates, really struggle to talk about that level. They can talk about the business case for action, but business model they struggle with. And then the third piece is mindsets. And I think one of the things I'd love to do is bring the global C-suite, and by that we mean the top teams of the 1,000 most influential companies in the world, not the biggest ones, and bring them to, say, Silicon Valley and dump them here for a week and let them imbibe.
You just did that not too long ago. It was, I guess, in May, June. I forget when was that you were here. You and a couple of people from you on Global Compact, and one of your colleagues came through and did kind of a learning journey through Silicon Valley and I think down to LA and Caltech. What did you learn about innovation that you didn't know? You were there, and it was almost a month or several weeks at least that you were here. What did you learn?
Well, just a quick thing. I mean, I did a climate quest, so it was an experiential learning journey in London just the other day, where they took us completely out of our comfort zone, where we had to make our own musical instruments, write our own song about climate change, and then go down in a group of 10 and sing that on the south shore.
You had the photo of that on Greenbiz. Yeah.
You know, so I can be uncomfortable as well. But in this particular case, we were immensely helped by people like the X Prize Foundation, Singularity University, and so on. And I think one of the shocks to me, I mean, every so often, I was thinking earlier on about, I've come to California since the early 70s, periodically to sort of breathe in the latest sort of paradigm-shifting technologies or whatever. And it was once solar in the 80s, then it was genetic engineering and a bunch of other things. This was an attempt just to see who are these people are starting to think in the exponential way that Ramez has just put up on the screen. And I think if we'd come 18 months to 2 years previously, the response we would have got is, you're Europeans, we have nothing to learn from you, go away. Or at least, you know, we'll tell you a bit about what we're doing, but there's not going to be much of an exchange. What we found was huge openness to working with mainstream business now. You know, the deep-pocketed big companies, because they're hard to shift, these incumbents. but they have the capacity, if they, we mentioned GM and Lyft earlier on, if they once start to seize onto some of this stuff, we could go a lot faster than we're currently going.
Yeah, Ramesh talked about Tesla, and we didn't talk about was the fact that General Motors is coming out with actually the Bolt, which is a higher, I think 230 or something mile range at a similar or maybe slightly lower price point. And I'm not just saying that to give the big company or frankly one of our sponsors a plug. What's significant about that is that you know. I'll be honest, and I was talking with them when I saw this story maybe 2 years ago that says GM is going to take on Tesla. I was like, okay, sounds good. You know, good luck with that, because Tesla's this startup golden child. Elon Musk is what's the movie character that he? Anyway, somebody knows what I'm talking about. Yeah, I can't hear it.
Show a bit more enthusiasm, Joe.
No, I just can't hear it. Anyway, but General Motors, you know, 106 or something year old company is now in the game, and of course behind them are almost every other major automaker. And I think that's really, to your point about the big companies, you know, being able to scale things quickly. Is really as much cause for optimism as anything.
Yeah, well, it's funny because with the new Project Breakthrough platform, we also launched earlier this week in New York a website, and on that there are a first set of interviews, and one of them is with a guy, CEO of a company called Covestro. It's new, it's spinning out of Bayer, or Bayer as some people call it, and it's the old materials sciences business. And they were described by one of the business magazines in Germany, which is where they're based, as an 80-year-old startup with 16,000 people and, you know, billions worth of revenues already. And so we're beginning to see this interplay, this hybridization of approaches. It's no longer just startups. It's some of these bigger companies starting to play the same game.
One of the many things that I find remarkable about you, John, first of all, you know, you coined the term triple bottom line in like 1994. You've been working in this, formed the firm of sustainability in what, the mid 80s, I think, early
87.
80s? I'm sorry?
87,
yeah. I have to just own that my entry point into full-time into this space was in 1989 when I was drafted basically very willingly to write the U.S. edition of your 1987 bestseller, The Green Consumer Guide, in the run-up to Earth Day 90. So once again, I've done this 1,000 times. Thank you. But you are, and you're 67. You still remain amazingly optimistic. I mean, amazingly optimistic about what's possible here. And there's so many people who you and I know who have come and gone, who have just thrown up their hands. What is it? How do you keep that sense going?
Well, I shouldn't say this probably, but it's probably to some degree genetics. I mean, I was born an optimist. My father, who's 95, was in Russia last week, a couple of weeks back. He was a veteran on the Arctic convoys in the Second World War. He's still hammering away, so maybe that's an element of it. But actually, there's something much deeper. When I was about 14, I read a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions.
Wait. When I was 14, I wrote a book? Is that?
I read the book.
Read a book. I'm
sorry. It's the accent. It doesn't carry across the pond. But there we go.
The hearing.
So anyway, the book introduced the concept of paradigm shifts, as many people in the room will know. And nowadays we talk about paradigm shifts. It's a new formulation of a toothpaste. That's not what Thomas Kuhn had in mind. He had in mind societal shifts that take about 70 to 80 years to crank through, because you actually need to get rid of the generation that was infected with the previous paradigm and then the people that they taught. And actually, oddly, I think we're about 65 to 70 years through that period. So why am I optimistic? As Ramesh Nam and many other people at this event have been talking about, we are at the most extraordinary inflection point. The problem is, every time we've been here before, we screw up royally. We end up often in the right place, but I often go back to Tom Midgley, the DuPont scientist who came up with leaded gasoline, brilliant breakthrough innovation at the time. Freons, Ramesh was talking about the stratospheric ozone hole, and then he contracted, sadly, polio when he was in the mid-1940s constructed himself a robotic bed and that strangled him. And I don't know, 3 things went spectacularly wrong. And I just look back at him and think, brilliant brain, but actually without the capacity to think through that scale of unintended consequences.
So what's gone spectacularly wrong? How do we break through that this time around?
Well, I think part of it's just conversations. And I think one of the things that when we did that trip a couple of months back, one of the things people we talked to was Paul Hawken. We started off with you, Joel. And one thing that people kept reiterating is, Silicon Valley is absolutely stunning at what it does. But these people often have the emotional intelligence of a gnat. I'm slightly exaggerating for effect. But, I mean, they want to do stuff, get it out there, see what happens. But the trouble is, like freons or leaded gasoline, by the time you get it out there at scale and have an industry that's then got sunk capital and wants to protect that, you are stuck. And so I think conversations as soon as possible, and in a sense, that's what you're doing. In getting this nexus of technology and sustainability at Verge, I think you are already modeling the sorts of conversations that we need to see more of.
So how, I still want to know, how do we get it right? Because there's, as we've seen, there's the innovation, not just on the stage, but in this room and the exhibit hall, and throughout, all over the world now, as you were seeing, and you wrote the book Zero Knots, and you've been writing about so many of these things in the 20 or 30 books you've have written.
It's 19.
19.
So it's much more modest number.
Okay, almost 20 books. How do we get it right?
I think there's a timing element to it all, and you've all seen the Gartner hype cycle, and I think the sustainable development movement's gone through that. And it actually, incidentally, next year, 2017, is the 30th anniversary of the Brundtland Commission definition of sustainability and sustainable development. I think part of getting it right is being really critical, forensic in a way, about what we were trying to do 30 years ago, what we've tried, what's worked, what hasn't, what lessons we've learned, what lessons we should have learned, before we then sort of merrily go towards 2030 with the sustainable development goals. So I think we're at one of these inflection points. I think in the 2030s, we could look back and say, why didn't we see some of the stuff coming that we're seeing on the screens here and outside on display? But it's not guaranteed to work in the right way. So I think we've got to be very calm and considered, but critically, we've got to be engaged. And we've got to look where the spotlight isn't shining. So we tend to look at the big incumbent companies, the known brands, the multinational corporations. But there are, as we all know, and you've got quite a handful of them here, there are these people who are coming out of left field who we've never heard of. And the question is, how do we get to meet them, support them in what they do, but also critically challenge them as they evolve their technologies or business models or whatever.
So when you say, how can we support them? How can we do all these things? Is the we here the big companies? Who is the we?
Well, I mean, I'm a baby boomer, and I see a lot of my friends and colleagues sort of getting to retirement age. I will never retire. I think this field is just getting.
I'm with you there, buddy. And that's a fist bump in America. I agree with you.
Sorry, which fist do you want?
Your choice. Never mind. Keep going.
I was always incompetent on the social
Point
front.
is that I'm never retiring either, so keep going. That's all right.
So, but quite a number.
You've just seen the sort of Brexit of cultural gaps here.
Totally. We'll do it after. But to your question, I see a lot of people of sort of our age saying, let's hand over the baton to the younger people. We stuffed up the planet over to them. Absolutely not. I mean, the older generations now have the wealth, they have the connections, they have the capacity to help in ways that if they simply just hunker down and become self-defensive and all the rest of it, we really do have a problem. So I think that intergenerational working is fundamentally important. So I think this needs all of us, all of the time, and a critical part of that is just not simply being aware of the problems, but being really excited about what's coming and how much fun this is going to be.
Yeah, well, it is fun, and that's why I'm not retiring, and you're not either, is because there's this amazing group of people, amazing, it's just opportunity after opportunity that we're deluged with, and the fun is sort of sorting through them and finding, what's next and how to be helpful to lift it, elevate it, amplify it, and give it the support it needs. But, I think many of us are trying to do that and finding those. It's so easy to be overwhelmed with all the incoming. It's a nice problem to have, in terms of too many opportunities, but it's still a problem. And so how do you sort through things?
Well, I just wanted to go on a slightly different point first, but
Okay.
And that is that I think one of the fundamental shifts that we've got to work through is redefining our ideas around security. And you've already begun that. I mean, a few years back, I wrote a chapter for a book that was done by Jürgen Randers, one of the Limits to Growth authors. And he gave us all the option of what we wrote about. And so I wrote about the role of the military into the 2040s. But you're now doing that. And I think getting those elements of our societies and economies involved in all of this is probably as critical as anything else. And I just wanted to say well done for actually getting that underway.
Well, thank you. Well, and what I got in doing this book with Puck Mickleby and Patrick Doherty is it helped me to think, well, what does it mean to be secure? What does that even mean? Because it's not, and Puck says this much more eloquently in his marine world, it's not about ISIS, it's not about that. I mean, it is, but it's about resilience in all its many forms. Resilience, and his great definition of that is being able to take a gut punch and come back swinging. But it's around, what does it mean to be secure? What does it mean to be prosperous? It's not just about money. And what does it mean to be sustainable? It's not just about the environment. And so broadening those horizons, on one hand, it's very, very helpful and brings in a lot more, makes a much bigger tent. But it also makes it more, in some ways it's comforting. Let's fix the environment. Let's, focus in on that. But now we've got hunger, we've got poverty, we've got education, we've got women's rights, we've got equity, we've got lots of other things. So it's very easy to be overwhelmed.
Well, it's funny, many years ago in London, we have something called the Royal Albert Hall, and I was speaking in front of 3,000 company directors, and I said, actually, the sustainability agenda is a bit like being on LSD, at which point the facilitator jumped on me and said, it sounds as though you know what you're talking about. And I said, well, actually I do, but it's the moment where everything becomes numinously, strategically important. Everything is important. I think we really have to firstly cut through that, but the way we've done that in the last decade is to do financial materiality studies inside companies. But now we've got to think about this systemically in a quite different way. And if we can once do that, then all of that cascade of different issues that you mentioned start to align into different patterns. That's where I think we are. I think our business schools and often the universities are still lagging that curve. So I think you're modeling here a very different form of business education, which I think is phenomenally useful.
I love the sustainability like LSD. I think that'll probably be reasonably well tweeted and probably repeated many, many times. And I wish we could keep going, but all I can say is that what a long, strange trip it's been. And I am so grateful and honored and appreciative to be on this journey with you. And I look forward to neither of us retiring and just keep going, and hopefully till your dad's age somewhere up there. And so thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing and continuing to share your optimism, your vision with all of us. Please join me in thanking John Elkington.
Thank you all.
Thank you.